"I can't capture this, it's impossible," whispered 31-year-old photographer Sarah Martinez as she lowered her camera, staring at the empty basketball court where she had been waiting for 3 hours. She was supposed to photograph Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's most private pre-game routine, a mysterious 45-minute ritual that no media member had ever been allowed to witness. Sarah had spent 6 months convincing the Thunder organization to grant her this unprecedented access, believing she could capture the defining moment that separated superstars from ordinary players. What she didn't know was that the invisible moment she was about to accidentally photograph would reveal a side of Shai that would change how the world understood the psychology of elite performance, and turn her career from sports photography into something much more profound. But let me tell you why this moment was so impossible to capture, and how Sarah's failure to get the shot she wanted led to the most important photograph of her career. The date was March 15, 2024, and Sarah Martinez stood outside the Paycom Center at 5:30 a.m., her camera equipment heavy on her shoulders, waiting for security to let her into the arena. As a freelance sports photographer for ESPN and The Athletic, Sarah had shot hundreds of games and countless athlete portraits, but she had never been granted the kind of access she was about to receive. For the past 2 years, rumors had circulated among NBA insiders about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's secret pre-game routine. Unlike other superstars who held public shooting sessions or conducted media interviews before big games, Shai reportedly spent 45 minutes alone in the arena, engaging in some kind of mental preparation that his teammates and coaches described as transformative. Nobody knows exactly what he does during that time, Thunder assistant coach Mike Wilkes had told Sarah during their initial conversation about the photo shoot. He arrives at the arena 4 hours before everyone else, goes onto the court alone, and does something that puts him in a completely different mental state. By the time the team arrives for regular warm-ups, Shai has this incredible focus and calmness that affects everyone around him. Sarah had convinced ESPN to let her pursue this story because she believed that capturing Shai's private routine could provide unprecedented insight into the mental preparation of elite athletes. This could be the defining sports photograph of the decade, Sarah had pitched to her editor. If we can show the world what separates a superstar from everyone else, it could change how people understand athletic excellence. But what Sarah discovered when she finally gained access to Shai's private routine would challenge everything she thought she knew about photography, athletics, and the nature of peak performance. When security finally let Sarah into the arena, she was struck by the eerie silence and emptiness of the massive space. The Paycom Center, which would be filled with 18,000 screaming fans in 12 hours, felt like a cathedral, sacred, quiet, and full of potential energy. Sarah set up her equipment courtside, choosing angles that would capture both Shai's physical movements and the emotional intensity she expected to see during his secret routine. She had researched meditation practices, visualization techniques, and athletic mental preparation, anticipating that she would document some combination of shooting practice, stretching, and focused concentration. At exactly 6 a.m., Shai entered the arena through the players' tunnel. He was wearing simple workout clothes, shorts, a t-shirt, and basketball shoes, and carried only a basketball and a small towel. Sarah raised her camera, ready to begin documenting what she expected would be an intense, dramatic preparation session. Instead, something completely unexpected happened. Shai walked to center court, sat down cross-legged on the hardwood floor, placed the basketball in front of him, and became completely still. For the next 45 minutes, Shai didn't move. He didn't shoot baskets, practice dribbling moves, or run through plays. He simply sat in perfect stillness, his eyes closed, his breathing steady and almost imperceptible. Sarah was initially confused and frustrated. This wasn't the dynamic, photogenic routine she had expected to capture. There were no dramatic moments, no intense facial expressions, no athletic movements that would translate into compelling sports photography. This is just meditation, Sarah thought after the first 15 minutes. There's nothing here to photograph. But as she continued watching Shai's motionless routine, Sarah began to notice something remarkable that would change her understanding of what she was witnessing. Despite his complete physical stillness, something profound was happening to Shai's presence and energy. The quality of silence around him seemed to deepen. The empty arena, which had felt vast and hollow when Sarah first entered, now felt focused and purposeful, as if all of its energy was being drawn toward the still figure at center court. Sarah had photographed hundreds of athletes in action, shooting, jumping, celebrating, competing, but she had never encountered anything like the powerful calm that Shai was generating through perfect stillness. Maybe this is the story, Sarah thought as she began quietly taking photographs of Shai's meditation. Maybe the most important part of elite performance happens in the moments when nothing appears to be happening at all. However, what happened in the final minutes of Shai's routine would reveal why this private preparation was so transformative, and why his teammates and coaches described it as the foundation of his exceptional mental toughness. At 6:43 a.m., after 43 minutes of perfect stillness, Shai slowly opened his eyes. Sarah expected him to stand up, grab the basketball, and begin some kind of physical warm-up routine. Instead, Shai remained seated and began speaking quietly to the empty arena. Sarah couldn't hear his words from her position courtside, but she could see that Shai was having some kind of conversation, not with another person but with the space itself, or perhaps with some internal presence that had emerged during his meditation. Through her telephoto lens, Sarah could see that Shai's facial expression had transformed completely. The calm stillness of his meditation had evolved into something that looked like deep gratitude, quiet confidence, and profound connection to something larger than himself. Sarah had photographed thousands of athletes displaying confidence, determination, and focus, but she had never seen anything like the expression on Shai's face during these final moments of his routine. After 5 more minutes of quiet conversation with the empty arena, Shai stood up, picked up his basketball, and walked toward the tunnel. He moved with the same calm, unhurried pace he had maintained throughout the session, but there was something different about his presence, a sense of readiness and inner strength that hadn't been there when he first entered. As Shai disappeared into the tunnel, Sarah realized that she had just witnessed something extraordinary, but she wasn't sure if her photographs could capture the true significance of what had occurred. But what happened when Sarah reviewed her images later that day would reveal that she had accidentally documented something far more important than she had initially understood. Back in her hotel room, Sarah uploaded the morning's photographs to her laptop and began examining what she had captured. Most of the images showed Shai in meditation, motionless, serene, apparently doing nothing that would translate into compelling sports photography. But as Sarah looked more closely at the sequence of photographs, she began to notice subtle changes that documented the internal transformation she had witnessed. In the early photographs, Shai looked like any athlete engaging in basic meditation, calm but ordinary, focused but not particularly remarkable. But as the sequence progressed, Sarah could see that something had been building during those 43 minutes of stillness. Shai's posture had gradually become more aligned, his facial expression had deepened into something approaching peace, and by the final images, his entire presence radiated the kind of quiet strength that she had felt filling the arena. The photograph that would eventually become iconic was taken during Shai's quiet conversation with the empty arena. In the image, Shai is seated at center court, his eyes open and looking upward, his hands resting on his knees, his expression showing a combination of gratitude, confidence, and connection that Sarah had never captured in any athlete before. But what made the photograph truly remarkable was something Sarah hadn't noticed while taking it: the way the empty arena seats, the hanging championship banners, and the court itself seemed to be responding to Shai's presence, creating a composition that suggested a deep conversation between the athlete and the space where he would perform. Sarah titled the photograph, "The Invisible Moment," because it captured the kind of athletic preparation that happened internally, invisibly, in the space between action and stillness. However, what happened when Sarah showed the photographs to her editor would demonstrate that she had documented something with implications far beyond sports photography. "Sarah, this is unlike anything I've ever seen in sports media," her ESPN editor told her during a video call later that week. "These images show an athlete preparing not just physically or mentally but spiritually. It's like you've captured the source of elite performance that nobody talks about because nobody can see it." The editor was particularly struck by the final photograph of Shai's quiet conversation with the arena. "This image suggests that peak performance comes from a sense of connection and purpose that goes deeper than technique or strategy. It's like you've photographed the moment when an athlete becomes aligned with something larger than individual achievement." Sarah agreed that the photographs revealed something profound about the foundations of exceptional performance, but she was unsure about how to present the story without overselling its significance. "I don't want to make this more mystical than it needs to be," Sarah told her editor. "But I do think these images show that the most important preparation happens in ways that are completely invisible to conventional sports coverage." But what happened when the photographs were published would demonstrate that Sarah had captured something that resonated with athletes, coaches, and fans in ways that surprised everyone involved. ESPN published Sarah's photo essay titled, "The Invisible Moment," inside Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's secret pregame ritual 2 weeks later. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Athletes from multiple sports reached out to Sarah, asking about Shai's meditation practice and whether she could document their own pre-game routines. Coaches inquired about incorporating similar stillness practices into their team preparations. Sports psychologists requested interviews about the mental preparation techniques Sarah had observed. But the most meaningful response came from Shai himself, who contacted Sarah through the Thunder organization to discuss what she had witnessed and photographed. "Sarah, I've been doing that routine for 3 years, but I've never seen it from the outside," Shai told her during a phone conversation. "Your photographs helped me understand something about my own preparation that I hadn't fully recognized." Sarah was curious about what Shai meant. "The way you captured those moments showed me that what I experience as internal preparation is actually a form of communication, with the arena, with the game itself, with something larger than my individual performance. I go into that stillness to remember that basketball is not just about me competing against opponents. It's about me participating in something beautiful and meaningful that connects me to everyone who will be in that arena." This conversation would lead to a collaboration between Sarah and Shai that would transform both of their approaches to their respective crafts. However, what happened when other NBA players began requesting similar documentation of their private routines would turn Sarah's sports photography career into something closer to athletic anthropology. Within 6 months of the Shai photo essay, Sarah had been contacted by 12 different NBA players who wanted her to document their pre-game routines, mental preparation practices, and the private moments that shaped their athletic performance. "Sarah, what you captured with Shai showed something that we all experience but never talk about," Phoenix Suns guard Devin Booker told her during their first consultation. "There's a spiritual dimension to elite athletics that gets lost in all the focus on statistics and strategy. I want you to help me understand and document that part of my game preparation." Sarah realized that her Shai photographs had opened up a completely new field of sports documentation, capturing the internal, invisible aspects of athletic preparation that conventional sports media ignored. "I'm not just taking sports photographs anymore," Sarah explained to her agent. "I'm documenting the psychological and spiritual practices that enable peak performance. It's like athletic anthropology." Over the next year, Sarah developed a specialized practice focusing on what she called invisible moment photography, documenting the private, internal preparation routines that elite athletes use to access their highest levels of performance. But what happened when Sarah returned to photograph Shai's routine 6 months later would reveal how her initial documentation had influenced his own understanding of his practice. In September 2024, Sarah was invited back to document Shai's preseason preparation routine. She expected to find him engaging in the same 45-minute meditation she had photographed earlier that year. Instead, Shai had evolved his practice into something even more elaborate and intentional. "Sarah, after seeing your photographs and understanding what I looked like during that routine, I realized I could go deeper into the preparation," Shai explained as they walked onto the empty court at 6 a.m. "I've learned to use those 45 minutes not just for personal focus, but for connecting with everyone who will be affected by how I play, my teammates, the fans, even the opponents." Shai's evolved routine incorporated elements of gratitude practice, visualization, and what he described as energetic preparation, intentionally generating the kind of positive energy that would elevate everyone around him during the game. "I used to think that pre-game preparation was about getting myself ready to perform," Shai told Sarah as he began his routine. "Now I understand that it's about preparing to serve something larger than my individual success." Sarah documented this evolved practice, capturing images that showed even deeper levels of focus, connection, and purposeful preparation than her original photographs. But the most significant outcome of Sarah's work would be its influence on how sports organizations began to understand and support the mental and spiritual preparation of their athletes. The Thunder organization, impressed by the insights that Sarah's photography had provided into Shai's preparation methods, hired her as a consultant to help other players develop their own pre-game routines and mental preparation practices. Sarah's work showed us that we were only supporting the physical and strategic aspects of our players' preparation, Thunder General Manager Sam Presti explained during a team meeting. "We realized we needed to create space and support for the invisible preparation that enables peak performance." The Thunder became the first NBA team to officially incorporate meditation spaces, quiet preparation areas, and what they called invisible moment support into their training facilities and game day routines. Other teams began reaching out to Sarah to consult on creating similar programs for their athletes, and within 2 years her photography work had evolved into a consulting practice that helped professional sports organizations understand and support the complete spectrum of athletic preparation. However, the most meaningful impact of Sarah's work would be its influence on young athletes who saw her photographs and began to understand that elite performance required more than just physical training and strategic preparation. High school and college coaches began using Sarah's photographs of Shai's routine to teach their players about the importance of mental preparation, focus, and the internal work that supports external performance. These images show young athletes that greatness comes from developing inner strength and connection, not just physical skills, explained University of Oklahoma basketball coach Porter Moser during a clinic where he used Sarah's photographs as teaching tools. Sarah captured something that helps players understand that basketball is as much about who you become internally as what you can do with the ball. Sarah received letters from teenage athletes who had developed their own pregame meditation routines after seeing her documentation of Shai's practice. Your photographs showed me that I could use quiet time before games to connect with something larger than my individual performance, wrote 17-year-old high school player Maria Santos. Now I have my own invisible moment routine, and it's changed how I approach competition and pressure. 3 years after taking her first photographs of Shai's meditation routine, Sarah published a book titled Invisible Moments: The Hidden Preparation of Elite Athletes, featuring her documentation of pre-game routines from over 50 professional athletes across multiple sports. The book became a bestseller not just among sports fans, but among business leaders, performers, and anyone interested in understanding the internal work that enables peak performance in any field. During her book tour, Sarah was frequently asked about what she had learned from documenting these invisible moments of athletic preparation. I learned that the most important work happens in the spaces between action, Sarah would explain during interviews. Elite athletes understand that their visible performance is supported by invisible preparation, the mental, emotional, and spiritual work that creates the foundation for excellence. Sarah would always conclude these discussions by referencing her original photograph of Shai's quiet conversation with the empty arena. That image taught me that peak performance is not just about individual achievement. It's about preparing to serve something larger than yourself, your team, your sport, your community, the beauty of human potential itself. Years later, when young photographers asked Sarah for advice about building a meaningful career, she would tell them about the morning she spent trying to capture Shai's invisible moment. I went into that arena expecting to photograph athletic preparation, but I ended up documenting something much more profound: the spiritual dimension of human excellence. Sometimes the most important photographs are the ones that capture what can't be seen rather than what's obviously visible. And in her office, Sarah kept the original print of Shai sitting in quiet conversation with the empty arena, surrounded by championship banners and 18,000 empty seats that seemed to be listening to whatever wisdom he was sharing during those final minutes of his invisible moment routine. The photographer who captured Shai's invisible moment had discovered that her most important work was not documenting what athletes did, but revealing who they became when they thought nobody was watching, and how that invisible transformation was the true source of everything the world got to see them accomplish on the court.